Welcome to episode 2 of Academic Misfits. This is the podcast for academics who feel like they're roller skating on the edge of academic norms. So today we're going to be talking to Nayoung Kim, PhD, and you can find her on LinkedIn. She said she's got an upcoming YouTube channel and she's on Instagram, and I'll share in the show notes some of the links that she gave us to her prismatic website. But generally, this is a website this is a podcast that I've created in order to talk to academics who feel like they are misfit in some way. That could be because academia hasn't made accommodations for them, because academia hasn't allowed for different voices to thrive. It could be because your skin color, your ability, whatever it is, doesn't fit within the academic spaces the way that they've been created since the beginning of universities. And we know how slow they are to change. So I'm hoping that with these podcasts, we can also shed light on ways that academia could be more accommodating to different voices and different perspectives and different ways of contributing knowledge. Because that's what all of us scientists had been aiming to do within academia, is to be challenged, intellectually challenged, to have discussions, to come up with new ideas, and, for me, solving problems within the community. So yes, this is this space to be able to do that. And sometimes we share advice about jobs and things like that, but generally it's a space to sometimes whinge, sometimes express joy at our differences, and just celebrate all the academic misfits out there. So welcome. Oh, I'm so excited. So thank you for being here, Nai.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So this is second episode, and I really wanted to talk to someone who is kind of emblematic of the creativity and the kind of punk style that I have here. So I feel like your PhD was pretty punk rock.
Wow, that's really flattering.
So I'm really excited to talk to you about your journey through academia and what you're doing now. But just to get my first question. So first I wanted to just ask you about, what it's like, what it was like for you being an academic and being in academia, and how you maybe felt like a misfit, or that the things that you were drawn to or the way that you wanted to do things in academia didn't exactly fit. So, how has that experience been for you?
Uh, so if I define myself as an academic, that'd be two words. One, anxious, two, anxious. Um, so I was like a totally anxious and nervous academic throughout my uh, grad school period, like the entire 10 years of my grad school period. I did love like being exposed to beautiful things, like beautiful insights, beautiful novels, because that's my specialty. So I did enjoy that part. But if you're in grad school and if you're an academic, like the default thing is that you need to communicate through academic journal. Uh, and there is a very particular mode of communicating when you're writing a journal article. And unfortunately, that was the part that I had most problem with. So obviously, I wasn't really equipped well to communicate in that mode. And this is something that I didn't realize for a very long time.
And your major
I
was?
think it was English.
Which is
So
very
I
odd to
know
me. I
that's
know it made me
ironic.
laugh the first time, and
Okay, so you're an English major, like you're supposed to write beautiful sentences and you can't? Yeah, I couldn't.
it's like nowadays I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to do like any quantitative data analysis.
Yeah. So you were just kind of off your what is supposed to be your core identity, and that's that's pretty embarrassing, um, because you're because you're meant to do that, like you're kind of trained to do that for 7 plus years, and I had trouble like right up till my prospectus writing, which is like almost at the end of your academic journey, and you still have trouble mastering the basic, what is supposed to be the basic skill of academic communication. So, so when it came to that point, your prospectus writing, I really had this realization, okay, something is really not working right here. And you need to tackle the situation before you attempt to write the biggest academic writing ever, because obviously that's not going to work,
Yeah.
judging by the process that you've gone through. So I had this kind of personal epiphany, um, about how I should tackle this situation, and that's when I started thinking really seriously about, oh, maybe I just don't fit into this mode. Maybe I am a little weird, or at least maybe I have tried to communicate myself in a mode that does not work for me. And well, that was the mode that was given to me and the only mode given to me also. So that was the part that I really came close to the truth. Okay, you don't belong here.
Yeah. That's I mean, a thesis is like given, when students ask me, what do you do to pass this PhD or doctorate? It's like, well, you've got a thesis at the end. Like that's
Mhm.
just it. At least in social sciences, right? So,
Yeah,
not obviously if it's drama or, something else, dance, but yeah, for anything, especially English, right?
yeah.
um but you had other things that you were kind of finding along the way that were kind of give you an inkling of like maybe this isn't the only way.
Yeah, I was very fortunate in that regard, because my institution offered the PhD students these opportunities to participate in workshops and internships that are not academic. So you still get to apply your critical thinking skills or other scholarly skills that you might have honed for the, um, duration of your graduate school years, but you were able to apply that to different topics. So for me, that was podcast production, and engaging in editorial work with an independent press and the institution. So I still got to work with my love of stories and novels, obviously, but I just got to channel that into different modes. And that was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, you obviously are working with the same kind of insight that you've been dealing with, while you're doing academic work, but you're just trying to talk about it in a different medium. And I just didn't know how powerful that could be, like, in terms of sounding authentic, because that was the biggest anxiety inducing issue that I had. Because every time I tried to produce an academic writing, I didn't sound authentic.
Mm.
Most of the time, I sounded fake. And I later realized, because I was trying to mimic the smart sounding prose,
Yeah.
that is obviously not me, because first, I don't have that smart identity. That's the biggest problem. And second, I'm a cross-lingual. I speak both in Korean and English, and my writing is always accented in that regard. So I really didn't feel like myself when I was trying to mimic this perfectly fluent and smooth academic prose written by native speakers, and that's what I was trying to do.
Mm. So you were a misfit in a
So
lot of different ways in terms of being trying to be in the academic space, but also you weren't doing your PhD in Korea, where you're from. You were
yeah,
in the U.S.
yeah, yeah. So I was doing it in my second language, and yeah, again, my specialty is English, so that's irony there again.
Yeah, but there is certain things like I remember being editor of a journal and just, kind of feeling really uncomfortable being in the space where you're telling people first your journal is saying we need more people from um, the global majority, and then you're also saying, but this isn't in native speaker English, which I was like,
Mhm,
we need to get rid of that. What is that? Or like you have to have translators, which some of them were from Pakistan and PhD students as well. So like, do they have the money for translators? And yeah, it's just I don't know. For me, it just felt really like contradictory to
mhm,
be,
mhm.
asking for this when we also want to have representation from many
Yeah,
different perspectives, in addition to,
yeah.
some of my colleagues have dyslexia or, you know what I mean? And if their universities don't have the money, for like getting somebody to edit the work before it goes out, then it's on them to, or their colleagues, their co-authors, to then
Mhm,
make it a little bit more grammatically correct and that there's no spelling
mhm,
errors and all that kind of stuff. But I think you get reviewer comments that are horrible as well. So yeah, I'm struggling to yeah, it feels bad to empathize with your situation because I can imagine that's another point of like frustration. And even myself, thinking about I can't
mhm,
write like ostensibly something something. Like that's just not me. And I think you're right. Like there's just more people who want to be writing who just don't have that access to it because they just didn't grow up with
mhm.
that. And I feel like it's like yeah, what do you think? Do you think academia just needs to be more flexible?
I would certainly appreciate more accented academic English. I mean,
Mm.
academic communication. Um, like, this doesn't mean that we need to disrupt grammar. We need to throw away understandable prose. But this is something that I came across, the question that I came across while I was actually writing my dissertation. So I got a comment on my prose, like, do you want to preserve your trait as a second language writer, or do you want it to sound like a native speaker? And that was actually incredibly valuable comment, and I'm grateful for that. And I thought, oh wow, I actually never intentionally try to insert my accent into my writing because I just presume that it is not allowed. And so far, that was the kind of input that I got about my writing, that you need to take out your accents, that you need to sound more like a native speaker, you need more edits. I mean, that's fine as long as the purpose is to communicate your message clearly. But once that message is communicated, I think the rest is really just putting your flair, like putting your traits. And for second language speakers, that is your accent. Like it's beyond just prose, the style of your prose, like your accent is literally your style. And I am not sure how widely that could be accepted, especially in an academic journal. I personally would really appreciate that becoming more acceptable,
Yeah.
really, because that's where I think, I personally believe that's where what we call global perspectives can really shine, like literally shine in the sentences. Um, so that would be great if that could happen.
Yes. That I love that. I love that because it's like I'm performing dance next month, and we always talk about how you're learning the moves, but when you add like a little bit of a hand gesture or a little bit of a move of the head, it's your flair, because you can do the
Hmm.
moves like straight without any kind of like personality, but every single person will
Yeah.
have a different flair. And imagine if we could explain what the flair is while we're submitting to the journal, and saying like, look, I've presented this in the same way of like, this is the ethics, number, but this is the flair that I've added on top. Um, and so that they know, what's on purpose rather than
Hmm.
assuming that it's supposed to be one way and it hasn't met my expectations, therefore it's wrong. Um, and obviously the people who have come before and the over representation of certain people in academia is going to then flavor that. So yeah, I really like that. So how did you find the confidence or the kind of temerity to be like, hey, I want to do things differently now that my eyes have been kind of brought open from the podcast or the other things that you were involved in?
Well, it wasn't exactly to marry. Like I like it wasn't me being single-handedly courageous, because I was fortunate enough to be in an institution that encourages these ventures, um, which I hope to see in more institutions. So I got to develop these weird ideas for alternative dissertations because of all the workshops and internship opportunities that I was given and exposed to. And it was there that I developed this idea of trying to communicate my insight in a different mode, like a different storytelling. So first, the podcast exposed me to obviously audio format, but it also comes with a very strong emphasis on narrative arc, which is not always highly emphasized in an academic journal, or if it is, it's a very long one.
Mm.
Um, and obviously an academic one, not a personal one.
Right.
So from the podcast, those two elements, like a very short, impactful narrative with your personal flair, I got those insights. And with work with the press, it was all about sensibility. It was all about being really, really true to your sensual experiences and your sensory receptors, because you are trained to kind of pay attention to how they vibrate, like how those receptors vibrate when you're reading poetry. So that's what I was doing.
Hmm.
I was editing poetry review, so it was my job to pay attention to how my feelings moved by reading those lines. And that was another insight that I got from this internship opportunity. It's like, okay, I really need to incorporate this dimension back into my academic writing, like the sense experiences. So yeah, the short narrative, my personal flair, and the sense experiences. Okay, I got these three new elements in my plate. How am I going to package that? That was another job. And on that point, my institution was very helpful. So they offered us with just prior examples of alternative dissertations. So one was a podcast. Yeah, the podcast dissertation. I admire her work very much. The title was my Gothic dissertation, I believe.
Oh
So it was
wow.
this like really interesting, literally Gothic exploration of literature and graduate school life. So
That's
that was really
amazing.
cool. Yeah.
So is that
So
something that
that,
we can find?
yeah, I
Okay.
believe so. I think that it's still available.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and graphic novels, like there were actually pioneering examples out there.
Oh
So
yeah, that's
those
true.
were curated, yeah, curated and supplied to us, which was really helpful.
Hmm.
So I had all these materials and support for me to actually dream about doing something different.
Mm.
If it if there wasn't such a support, I'm not sure if I would have been able to pull that through.
Yeah.
I would have definitely gone through a bigger challenge, and I would have had like an authority that not just authority, like unwilling authority to persuade, which would have been, yeah, very anxiety inducing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know. That does take temerity then, and like a sense of um like I know what I'm doing and knowing the path, and you know what I mean? Like I need, you'd need to research like what kind of path am I going to take through this? Um so yeah, how were you able to bring that your story, the things that I think are almost like woo woo for academia, what kind of things did you end up doing, and how were you able to incorporate more of Nye in your work? So I think other
Yeah,
people
so
would find that helpful, and I know that you're helping some universities to think through how to support their own students, right?
I ended up producing online multimedia articles. So it is a collection of online articles, and it's still living on still living online. It's my website.
Oh yeah, do we have that
And
available? Did
I
you
believe
share that
so.
with me?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that the this one?
Yes, it is. So right now it's still evolving, so I'm adding new articles and essays onto it. So for now, the very first article it's in Korean. So I'm producing this Korean art essays as well. So this is like constantly changing. So if you go a little bit down,
Mm.
yeah, so these are all the articles that I produced for my dissertation project. So
Oh.
yeah, they are not academic writing per se. It is more of a combination of my thoughts or critical insights that I got from reading one or two novels mixed with my personal experience as a migrant scholar, I
Mm.
should say. A migrant scholar, or I use the term ocean crosser
Oh,
because
I
I
love
crossed the
that.
Pacific Ocean. Yeah, I crossed the Pacific Ocean to study in the US. And that experience of crossing the ocean really shaped how I view the world and how I approach critical texts and novels. So I made that imagery my core, kind of like the grounding image of my entire dissertation and my critical perspective for this project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And for anybody listening, I mean, these pictures are, the images are like drawings on top of blurred images. There's pictures of kind of a wet walkway, and almost like graffiti style um, on a what would you call that actually? um, in a
this
side
particular
street.
one, yeah,
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 I
yeah.
like that one. Like an alleyway, and a smudge of clarity among the unfocused landscape. That's how I can. That's how I would describe it, because it's like somebody took a window that was foggy in the rain and just with their fingers, wiped it away for a little bit of clarity.
So I tried to make these images as evocative as possible that somehow relate to, like, gives you a glimpse of what the essay is about. So this particular one is about Chinese graphic novelist and Chinese American writer who both deal with this theme of going back to your hometowns that is either demolished or will be demolished. So it's all about, yeah, memory and journey back to your core. And this particular Chinese character that is written in this image is actually the very character that is used when demolition is planned. So you will see this particular letter written on the walls of the building that is going to be demolished. So I brought that image in and use it as a threading imagery to weave the entire essay. So that's why this one isn't here. And the second one, the one on the right, with this blurry cityscape and the line drawing of the
Flowers?
continent and the flower. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I
that
see
is
the
actually the
continent.
map of the Pacific. Yeah,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah, it's the Pacific Ocean, and this is my tattoo.
Ah, it's incredible. Absolutely love that. I wonder how many of us in the academic misfit category are tattooed. And as
Still
a way to
full.
like, did you get it like as a celebration of your like finishing your PhD or along the way?
Actually, along the way, actually before the dissertation project started, like this was kind of a reminder to myself of who I am. Because like that's the ocean, that's the Pacific Ocean, and decided to define myself and understand myself as an ocean crosser. So that is, yeah, really like a reminder to myself. Okay, this is how I am, and this is how I view the world, and this is how I can contribute to the world. So that's, yeah, that's why I got it on my back. And obviously, this is going to be the core perspective of this project also. So there it goes.
Yeah. And what is this is selfish?
This dissertation is
Yeah.
selfish. So this was the last kind of reflection piece at the end of the project. So this is kind of like a conclusion, because you can say this is in place of a conventional conclusion of the project. So I go through my entire writing process, starting from the perspectives to the end of the last piece, and how my perspective shifted during the project and what I learned throughout the process, how I grew or did not grow as a writer and a scholar.
Yeah. And the first one, if anybody is listening, was the one with the Chinese symbols called Journey to a Non-Place, which I think is fitting for that one as well. So, yeah, I absolutely am in love with these. And are these in English that people can read?
Yes, everything
Okay.
is in English.
And so, yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes, but this is the prismaticreader.com/stories on your website. So thank you for sharing that. And I think like,
Thank-
yeah, you have so many identities, Nye. Do you think so?
I never consciously thought about that,
Mm.
but when I sat down to create this project, that realization kind of dawned on me. Okay, actually, you do have this like myriad of identities that you didn't really consider as identities. Ocean crosser is one for sure, because people cross oceans all the time.
Yeah.
But
Well, not everybody.
acknowledging that, well, I guess it is incredibly empowering to actually acknowledge that as part of yourself, or part of your identity, or however you define it, and that this is not just a experience, but something that actually shapes your values, and something that could even shape your critical perspective. And the latter realization was actually very important to bring this project together, because otherwise, I certainly would not have relied on this identity to weave all the text that I brought for this project.
And now you're a visual storyteller and cross-lingual because you have all of these skills that you've accumulated throughout your years, and you now
Mhm.
have an ability to be an editor, a writer, a appreciator of art, with your own perspective, and a lot of people appreciate that. Yeah, how does it feel to be in this visual storyteller feel like the that it's kind of taken over or that it's kind of sitting on top of the ocean crosser?
Incredibly grateful because I didn't even dare to envision something like that for myself. And this is something that really fires me up, that I really believe, and I really believe in their values, like the value of art and the value of appreciating and art and how that might enrich people's lives. So being able to do that with a perspective that other people appreciate is, I just feel grateful for that. And I really love doing that. It is, I guess you could also say, it is not a super stable thing, not because this is economically precarious, not necessarily bad, but like being a cross-lingual means your writing could also be constantly in flux, like in terms of, how should I say, maybe your grammar, maybe your style, because you can actually see your writing style changes over time depending on like where you stay and depending on what you've been doing. And I'm just noticing that weird kind of flexibility or instability in my own writing for being a cross-lingual, which could be an incredibly exciting thing or a kind of a precarious thing. So that's kind of an interesting part. We'll see how that evolves.
Yeah, but I can see, like, when we talk about your visual storytelling, how excited you get, in our sessions of, imagining this new life that you could have, that in the same way that you imagined or you had a dream when you were doing your PhD of, like, maybe there's a way where I can be authentic and people will want to pay attention to this. Um, and your internships and things like that, and what you've done since then, more and more people have said what you do is very valuable and worthwhile and beautiful, and I want you to do more of it. And I've been watching some of your videos as well, your storytelling videos and reels that you have on Instagram. I've really been enjoying them. So, and I was going to say, one of the things that you said to me first was, I saw this post that you put up about being able to wear, very colorful clothes, and I think I had my weirdo socks on,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
actually wore this weekend, and somebody was like, "I love that, and I love your earrings with they're like the candy heart, but they say, like, yeah,
yeah.
right, dead inside," that sort of stuff. Um, yeah, and so that's what drew you to me. But you have your own history of being a kind of outcast or somebody memorable for your colorful way about you.
I was definitely a colorful person. I was visually conspicuous. So I think a lot of people, like in my previous institution, like during my MA years, people knew me as this flashily dressed person who looked like an art person. Like that was the question that I got so often. You're an art person, right? Like, no. And there was this one outfit that kind of a surprise and it bored everybody in, in the seminar room. So I was wearing this really long maxi red polka dot dress, and I was wearing this green backpack and a denim jacket. I'm like, oh, here comes Miss Strawberry, and I became Miss.
So Did you intend on being a strawberry? I think is like my biggest question because the first time I heard this story from you, I was thinking you were a strawberry. But did you intend the green backpack paired with the dress?
Well, I didn't intend it. I didn't
Subconsciously.
intend it, yeah, until I stepped out of the door and saw myself in the mirror and like, oh, like, yeah, I kind of look like a strawberry. That's fine.
That's fine. I'll just keep going. I love that. So, you finished your PhD. What have you been doing since then? And let me know if I should share any of the pictures of things that you're doing. Yeah, maybe I'll just do that now.
Yeah, so I've been writing a short column for this art newspaper in Korean about contemporary arts for a Korean audience. So it's not an art criticism. It's more like a story that is accessible to aesthetically curious people. So I mainly weave kind of free flowing story mixed with the appreciation of the artwork and the flares of the artist. I'm trying to make it accessible as possible. So I've been doing that once every 2 weeks, and I've been making this accompanying teaser video that go with them. So that's what I've been doing. I've been also creating introductions or exhibition intros for Korean artists in English, and that are also not art criticism, but more like a stories about the artists as humans and their values as humans and what they try to communicate through their artwork. So it's very, very free flowing and narrative, inclined to narrative. So what I really want to do, like the most important thing that I want to do with this is to show the artist as a human and the sort of values that drive them to through their artwork. So like the human behind the artwork, that's what I'm trying to communicate with these essays. So those two have been occupying my life, my life, my time.
And then you have your YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, so these are the videos that I make as teasers for this art column in Korean. So this is sort of an experiment for another YouTube project that I am envisioning. So this is my dream project. So I'm thinking of creating a YouTube channel in English that pairs contemporary art and novels for romantics, practically. Like romantics, I mean, who still want to believe the power of beauty and kindness in saving the world. So that's kind of like a storyline and the kind of people that I want to reach with this. So when this one sees the light, I'll make sure to share it because I'm
Yes,
sure there are a lot of romantics out there.
absolutely. And I mean, how do you, because we've talked about, yeah, sometimes you just bring up like, back in the 1700s, this is what I mean. And yeah, how do you think about romantics? How would you define people who would love that kind of aesthetic?
I think right now, when there's so much content, so much sensational, viral, or violent content, and everything is about efficiency, productivity, and making much out of your time, romantics are people who can actually pause and take time to just see something beautiful, like something that might not amount to anything productive, but for the sheer pleasure of looking at something beautiful, of looking at beautiful human creation and getting inspired and replenished by it. It's like sadly that has become a definition of romantic, I think, in this era. And I think those desire needs to be heard and satiated because it's not just about escaping from your hectic life, it's actually replenishing and feeding your soul, like in order to function as a empathetic human being. At least that's my belief, which is why I'm a romantic, helpless one.
You know what? There's another one of my clients that you should meet. And she posts on Facebook, I think every day, good morning.
Mm,
And it's just whatever she sees. Like it might be an old door on a really old Victorian building that is kind of the paint's coming off at the edges. And she'll just have a picture of that and good morning. And everything is so beautiful.
mm-hmm,
And you're just like drawn to it and you have to say good morning, you have to have a smile. And I mean, some of them are like traditionally beautiful, like I don't know, a bunch of balloons or something like this, but or a flower or something like that. But some of it's just like I found this wrapper on concrete and there's just something
mm-hmm,
about the way the
mm-hmm.
wrapper is on there. And it's actually made me see the world in a different way. Like I'll go out and I'll be like, "Oh wow, that's an interesting part of the world that I hadn't noticed before."
Yeah, yeah. But that's what I think that's what art does, or appreciating something beautiful does. It actually impacts how you view the world. So that's what I'm hoping to do if this YouTube channel ever sees a light of day. Okay, I maybe this could be like a little bit of light from morning that could shine their day or something. That'd be great.
Yeah. And I think it's incorporating, or do you feel like it's incorporating the kind of misfit? And how would you envision that it is incorporating the misfit or even appreciating the misfit?
Well, I think you'll be misfits or at least silly if you are not aiming for viral content now. So I'm not aiming for viral content. So by definition, that makes me a misfit.
No, absolutely. I mean, people say like, "Oh, you should do this on your podcast or you should do this when you do a whatever online." And most of the time I just talk. I mean, obviously, it's hard to like ignore these messages, especially when I get DMs going, "We can bring you 1 million followers by tomorrow." Like, no, that's not my intention.
It is very tempting, and it can be very tempting. It is tempting for me that, oh, like you could boost this channel and make a like how much dollars out of it. It is certainly tempting, but
Yeah.
I can also clearly see where that would end up. Like this would be another. I would probably be enslaved by it, like totally tied to its logic of productivity. I need to make something out of it. Like, I don't want to add that to the world that is already driven by money. People have that enough. Like I don't need to contribute to that.
Yes. So, where can people find you if they want to see more of your content? Is it on LinkedIn? Is it on Instagram?
It's both on LinkedIn and Instagram, and both of my accounts have a link to my portfolio, which also have links to all my social handles and my website. So if you want the actual writings themselves, you can go to my website. If you want just like a visual stimulation, you can go to Instagram. If you want some professional connection, you can of course go to LinkedIn.
And on LinkedIn, you're Nayoung Kim.
Nayoung Kim, and I also have my nickname there too in the
Okay.
invitation.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, this has been amazing, and I loved all the artwork that you shared in order to do this episode. So I'm really excited, but I never would have like embraced the word romantic, but now I'm now going to embrace that word. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was really wonderful.